nerds, what's up? Today I want to talk about a few of my pet peeves when it comes to discussing books. Now, I realize this is my first video of 2024, and I don't know if it's necessarily good energy to put a pet peeve video out as my first video, but this is the idea I wanted to talk about, so I'm sorry. We're just gonna live with it. So I do a lot of book discussion videos on here, and in fact, that is why I started YouTube in the first place, was to find a place to discuss books with people, deeply discuss them, and it's been amazing. That's been the best part of BookTube for me, is being able to talk with you guys, and a lot of the times you and I don't agree, and it's still a super great productive conversation. I've changed your mind sometimes, you guys have changed my mind, and that is the beauty of discussing books, right? It's to get that stuff out there. However, in the 3 years I've been doing this, there have been a few arguments that come up over and over again that just drive me crazy. And they are arguments I find that tend to shut down all discussion. It's not necessarily that you're disagreeing with me, because like I said, there can be amazing discussions where you don't agree with the other person, but it's that they just like shut down all discussion. So I wanted to talk about them today and talk about like better ways to hate on someone's faves. That's what I'm saying. A better way to discuss with people that you disagree with. So I got 4 for you today, and we're gonna jump right into it. The first one is one of the funniest ones, and I have gone it several times over my years on BookTube, but it came to more prominence recently with my Sansa video, which is the argument where someone comes in and says, it doesn't matter, it's fictional. There are a lot of different ways to interact with art, not even just books, like paintings, music, any sort of art. And one way to interact with art is just to take it at face value. Like, there is no problem with reading a book, loving it, and never really thinking about it again or not deep diving. I've always said, I don't think you need to be interested in the Cosmere to like Brandon Sanderson. Like, there are so many different ways that you can interact with books. And the way I personally like to interact is obviously deep dives. If you've been here, that's probably very clear. That's the way I like to interact. I like those details. So, the argument of it's fictional is just so silly to me. Like, you don't think we know that it's fictional? Like, obviously it's fictional. We are ignoring that portion of it to better interact with what we read and to better relate it to our real world and relate what we've read to our experiences, which is just like a very normal way to interact with art. It'd be really weird if someone told someone, oh, I saw this beautiful painting and it made me feel these emotions and this is why I liked it. And someone was like, well, that painting isn't real, right? It's not like actually a person. Like, that would be so bizarre. And so I find it weird that that's a common argument for books. Like, you can't discuss it, it's fictional, you can't bring any real world into it. And I find that this is normally used when they disagree with me. Like, I'm guessing this person didn't like how I argued for Sansa, and so the answer was, well, it's fictional, why are you taking it so seriously? It stops conversation. How do you respond to that? The funniest one I ever got, and I'll flash it on the screen if I can find it, was this was said to me on one of the silliest videos I've ever made. A long time ago, I made a video comparing like Hogwarts houses to personality types. And I mean, just the concept of that video is so stupid, right? It was meant to be just lighthearted, silly fun. And someone was like, you're an idiot, it's fictional. And it was like, yeah, I know. Are you worried I'm like Andy from Parks and Rec?
I can't believe we're at Hogwarts.
No, that's Buckingham Palace. Hogwarts is fictional. Do you know that? It's important to me that you know that.
And I don't live in reality. Like, it's fictional. Anyway, I just think it's a lazy argument. I don't understand it. And for me, it's like, well, if you don't want to deep dive, why are you here? Just go look at reviews. Don't come to a video that's clearly trying to deep dive and say it's fictional. Okay, I've said enough. Okay, this next one is actually more specific than the other ones on this list, and this specifically has to deal with children's books. One of my least favorite things that I've seen people talk about on my channel, on other channels, in book panels, is basing adult characters on their goodness in children's book based on how much they let kids get away with. Let me explain what I'm trying to say. I'll use Harry Potter as an example because it's widely known and people don't get mad at you at spoiling Harry Potter at this point. I feel like if you haven't engaged with it, you're not going to. So People always love to talk about some of the adults in Harry Potter, like specifically Dumbledore, about what terrible people they were, because look at what they let Harry do. Can you imagine in book 1, they let Harry just go on his own? Like, they're so irresponsible. And it's like, it's a children's book. Now look, before you come at me, I think that we can critically analyze children's books. I think some children's literature is better than others because usually it appeals to a wide audience and it is still good as an adult versus just as a kid, and it's not stupid, it has good writing. There is definitely ways we can talk about and judge children's books and not just wave it away as children's literature. But the one thing we can't judge is letting kids do things in children's literature. That's literally the point. Kids want to read stories about other kids being the heroes. And there's a reason a lot of kids' books are like kids with orphans and stuff, because obviously, if these children had adults in their lives in the way that we would like adults to be, caring and protective and good role models, we wouldn't let children be in danger. We wouldn't let Hogwarts have moving staircases. It's bonkers. But that's what kids like. That's the point. Kids want to think that they are Harry and they get to defeat the basilisk and they get to defeat Voldemort. Because that's literally the point of children's literature. It's escapist in the way that they get to believe that they get to do things that they don't get to do in their regular lives. Why do you think it's so popular? And the idea of like Hogwarts' a safety hazard, yes, it's hilarious. I love all those funny videos about it, but that's part of the charm of the book as a kid. And one specific way I thought about this was, I remember at the end of Philosopher's Stone, there's this whole quote of Harry saying, you know what, I think Dumbledore wanted me to have a chance to go against him again. Like, that's why. And Ron's like, oh, yep, he's a nut job, all right. And I've seen adults point to this all the time about like, it's so irresponsible, Dumbledore's such a bad caretaker. And it's like, as a kid, I remember that quote meaning so much to me, like, oh, he believed in Harry, because I was 10. So that seemed cool. Anyway, I just think it's a very lazy argument and totally misses the point of what children's literature is for, and is one of the ways that as adults we try to judge literature when we are not the audience it's for. I was rereading one of Neil Gaiman's nonfiction essays recently for a different reason, and I loved the quote. Again, he says basically that adults have very little idea of what appeals to children. We know very little about them. And whenever I see that kind of argument, look, there are other reasons you could argue against adults in Harry Potter. And I'm totally with you to argue about those things because it's fun. I love book discussions. But the argument that they were bad caretakers because they let our young protagonists do things, just, you have to sometimes take into account who the audience of literature is. Period. Okay, the next one is one I get a lot, and only ever if I dislike a book, which is the phrase, you just didn't get it. The idea being, if you didn't like the book I like, you didn't get it. You aren't smart enough for it. It's too deep for you. No, sometimes I got it and I just didn't like it. Now, I think saying you didn't get it can be useful in very certain circumstances when you are willing to actually describe the part you don't think someone got. I'll use a great example of this. In my first Witcher video, which I really didn't like the first Witcher book, and I was talking, I won't get into super details, but I was talking about something about The Last Wish, and I didn't like this part about Yennefer and Geralt's relationship. And some commenter said, I don't think you interpreted this one thing correctly. Here's how I think it's supposed to be interpreted. And it actually changed my mind. It like literally changed my opinion, because the person wasn't saying you just didn't get it and leaving it there. The person took a very specific thing they thought I didn't understand, explained it from their perspective, and I could have chosen not to agree with that, but it wasn't just saying like as a blanket, like you don't get it. Most times when people are saying you just didn't get it and they don't offer any backup, any explanation, they're just angry and don't want to either discuss with you because they don't have anything to say against your arguments, or maybe they're feeling lazy. But I really hate that. People hate things I love all the time, and maybe it can feel like they didn't get it. They probably did. They probably got it. They just didn't like it, and that's okay. And this leads really well into my last thing that bothers me in book discussions, is not letting differing opinions just stand. Sometimes you're not going to convince somebody. that's okay. As an example, I'm specifically thinking of a conversation I had on Discord once where a bunch of us were discussing a specific book and talking about something I didn't like, something they did like, and we were going on and on. And finally, it was like totally fine. It was a totally normal discussion. And I just said, look, I just don't think we're gonna convince each other. I think like you liked that part, I didn't. Oh well. And I kind of thought like that was gonna let it lie. This person would not let it go. They kept messaging me. They kept pinging me. They kept going over and over and over again, refusing to just let me have the opinion I had. Like they couldn't let it go. And I understand how strong it can feel when you really love something. Trust me. So I have a channel. But sometimes it's okay if people just think differently than you. You can just let it go. I have a lot of friends from BookTube who have 1-starred favorite books of mine, and I've done the same to them. And we're friends still because we can just let it lie. Like we discuss it for fun, and we're not necessarily forcing the other to come to our opinion. Like the fun in a book discussion is the discussion of it. You know, it's the radiance, you know, journey before destination. If you're getting into a book argument with the only idea that you have to convince the person at the end and they have to agree with you, you're probably not going to enjoy discussing books a ton. We all have different life experiences, different backgrounds, different interpretations of things that are just going to make every book a different experience. Just sometimes you got to let it lie. Okay. Those are 4 of my pet peeves in book discussions that I've experienced a lot over the last few years. I'd love to hear your pet peeves in book discussions, or if you've experienced any of these, or if you've been guilty of them. Let's be honest, we've all been guilty of them sometimes. And I hope you guys are having a great new year. Do I have a plan for content for you guys? No. You can look out. I'm going to be starting Knights of the Seven Kingdoms soon. So if you like my Song of Ice and Fire content, it's going to be more in the next coming months. If you are tired of that content, I am so sorry. That's just kind of where I am right now in my life. You'll also start seeing some SPFBO reviews if you follow that competition. If you don't know what I'm talking about still somehow, here's a video on it. You'll get to see some of those soon, and we'll see. I'm sure there will be many a video essay in our future. If you like these kind of videos, please like and subscribe. That is the best way to support me. And if you want to see what I'm currently reading, you can check me out on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. I'll see you next time. Bye.